Hello, today I'm going to continue a bit about our time of moving to France and settling in France. And I think the last video I did about this, I probably covered up to the time about the first year we were here when we were working to create our home. And I feel the side of that maybe that I didn't cover was the emotional side and what was going on emotionally for me, because it's a big thing starting a new life really, which is what it amounts to. If you leave a country, it really is a completely new life. And I think that's part of it that maybe I haven't fully shared here, and I think that would be good, because anyone who's thinking of doing that, if any of you are thinking of moving abroad to anywhere, not just France, then that is something to consider as well. So for me, the first year was a mixture, a real mixture of emotions. From the point of leaving, which I found really traumatic, the actual just driving away from Settle. I'm going to try not to get too emotional about this as I describe it. Then I think that was overtaken by the excitement of being on a bit of an adventure and driving around France and just the day-to-day logistics of doing everything. And I think that's often what happens with emotional stuff. It gets a bit put down because you're having to deal with practical things. So you deal with the practical things and maybe you don't really face the emotional stuff much. So I think it was very much like that for me during the first year. It was a bit like, hey, we've done this, we've got to make this work. We had nothing to go back to easily. When I say nothing to go back to, we had everything to go back to in terms of family and people that we loved and knew. But in terms of actually having a house, of course we didn't have a house because we just had our camper van. We sold everything before we left. So it wasn't like we had that easy return option, which probably was good. I never felt like at any point I actually wanted to return, but I did very much miss people. I really missed my two boys, friends, good friends, my mum, who was still alive at that time. Familiar stuff, just all the familiar things, the language, it was just very much me and Tom for the first year. And then after that first year, we branched out. We made a conscious decision. We had a home we could actually be in, and we made a conscious decision to try and connect with people because we actually felt we were in a position where we could do that at last. So that's when we started with language classes and things like that, which really helped. And most of the people I met at those language classes, the early ones, are the people that became really good friends. It's a bit like when you go to university or friends you make at school or college. Often those people become really strong friends. And that's something that's different here. It's a bit like, because you're a smaller group of people, let's say, that speak English, then there is that sort of, it's the friendships you make are quite deep. And I think particularly because nearly everyone is away from their families. So you've got a group of people that may be a bit unusual in the fact that they are people that we've decided to actually move away from everything we know. And that's a bit strange. I sometimes think about that and I think, what is that about? Why am I like that? Because I've got, good friends in the UK who would just, the thought of doing that is out of their comprehension. Why on earth would you move away from everything you know, people you love and your family? And I don't think I've really come to an answer about that, to be honest. I think it's just something maybe that's within me, that I'm a very sort of steady person, I think, most of the time. But I do have a side of me that longs for adventure and kind of likes to do something a bit different. Not in any huge way, but I think, moving to another country and doing that was that side of me, really. And I also thought, it's only France, it's not that far away. And which, on the whole, it hasn't been that far away. But certainly during COVID, that was really challenging for me, because suddenly it might as well have been Australia we were living in, because we weren't able to get to our family and our families couldn't get to us. And I think it was easier in the first few years because people could come. And it's not like people came a lot, but they were able to, and they'd come, like, so my boys would come for a week or something. I'd see them, that'd be really nice. And some friends came and things like that. And it felt quite easy. It felt quite easy for me to go back as well. So there was that connection there. But the COVID thing really tested that. For the best part of a year, we didn't see each other. We didn't travel to England and they didn't travel to us. And so that was hard. But as several people have said to me, it was also hard if you're in the same country. So I think that was just a hard time. But it's something to consider when you are moving abroad as to how easily, especially in the future, we're going to be able to travel. That's something to think about. So I find that quite difficult. And I think for me, what it was is just at times the missing people was acute. So at times it was just very acute. You know, I'd walk up the village, I'd see children the same age as my sons. I'd see children my sons were grown up by then, of course, but when I saw young boys, it reminded me of them, and so I find that really emotional. I would just miss them, but really some of what I'm missing was probably just their younger selves as well, because by this time they were reasonably grown up. So there's lots of things, and I think it depends what time in your life you're doing this kind of thing as well. I think Tom and I were relatively young. We weren't retired as such, so I'm trying to remember how old I was when we did this. I was 48 and Tom was 50. So we weren't sort of in our 60s and retired. We were a little bit younger than most people do it, maybe. So I suppose I was at the age where, in a way, my children were just grown up and just at that point of leaving home or left home. And I think some of my emotions would have been around that as well. But over time, made good friends, and these friends they're not family, obviously, but some of the relationships feel a bit like that because you haven't got family. So if anybody's ill, like we had a friend very ill, and so we all rallied round as if we were family and helped to look after her. And there's things like that where you really sort of rely on each other more, I think. But if you've got those friends, and I think, you do tend to meet people over time, then that's a really good support, and then you start to feel more settled. So I've always said this about moving, because I've moved house quite a few times in the UK as well. And when I was younger, there was a big move that our family did from living up in Aberdeen in Scotland down to Sheffield. And at that time I was 9 years old and really had quite established friendship groups there. And I remember thinking it took me 2 years to feel happy in Sheffield. And I never communicated that to my parents or anything because I didn't want to upset them. I really missed my previous place for a couple of years. And I think that holds true for me even as an adult. I think for me it takes about 2 years to feel that it's my home and that this is where I am, and, just to feel supported in a place and for it to feel really familiar. And so now I think over the years what happened is that we just gradually friendships deepened, we got used to being here, the language became more familiar, the French people became more familiar so that they feel like friends, and the whole surroundings and everything just feels a lot more, it all sort of normalised to the point now where it feels totally like home. It is our home. I feel very much, you'll be able to tell from these videos, I very much love this place. I feel probably at my calmest here, although I love to go to visit friends and family in the UK. I really love to see them all, but I miss this real peace that we have here. So yeah, it's a process, but I thought I hope that's not too much of a ramble, but I just wanted to share some of the feelings thing, not to just give the impression that, oh yeah, came here, it was really easy and stuff. It wasn't easy, actually. It wasn't easy at all in many ways, but it was also a lot of other things mixed in. So yes, it was a challenge. Sometimes I felt sad. Sometimes I desperately missed my kids, particularly. I questioned what I was doing, like, how could I do this? How could I leave my children? Of course, by this time they were young men, but even so. And my mother, who was obviously elderly and going to be needing more support. Having said that, I also had, and this is just my stuff, but I also really always had the idea that I had 2 boys and I really wanted them to be free of me, actually, to be free to go into the world. And back to one of the books I shared about Kahlil Gibran and the Prophet, that as parents we are the bows that fire the arrows being the children, into the future. And so I still have this very strong feeling that as a parent, my job is to free my children to live their lives, which is hopefully what I've done. And so I think part of me moving here was a sort of final part of that, maybe a bit abrupt by a lot of people's ideas, but I felt like they were ready for that as well. And I think it made a clear division between me being the mum, as in a mum looking after my kids, to me being the mum that of adults, of young adults, and having a more balanced relationship, which is what I wanted. And hopefully, I don't know, hopefully it's been good for them. I really hope so. But it doesn't mean to say it's easy to do that. So yeah, so I think lots of things mixed in there, but hopefully I've given a flavour of what it was like. And if you're thinking of moving abroad, then yeah, this the emotional side is something. It's not a surprise, I guess. And I think it's very. I found it. I could deal with it. It didn't consume my whole being and all my time. There's plenty of other things going on that I was really enjoying. It was more just a wave that kept coming occasionally. And I think that's how it is for me. And I think it's still like that sometimes. Sometimes I realise I'm missing things back in the UK. I'm missing certain things, especially now I've got 2 grandchildren, 2 little boys. So, at times I have the same thing. I have the wave of thinking, oh, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? And, I don't know. I don't really know if it's the right thing or not. But at the moment, I think for most of the time it feels like the right thing to be doing right now. So that's what I'm doing now. Might not always do this, so I'm enjoying it at the moment. Well, I hope that's been of some benefit to you or of some interest. So lots of love, and there's more videos here, more videos about us moving to France and living here. So yes, if you want more of these, subscribe. Lots of love. Bye.